with the consultant. Health is not merely the absence of diseases. It is your social, economic, physical, spiritual, and mental well-being. Just imagine you on 88.5 Super FM, talking, questioning, sharing your experience, information, education, entertainment, news, instructions, advice on diabetes, high blood pressure, strokes, menopause, AIDS, pregnancy, sex.
Sex? Did you say sex?
As prescribed, take your medication, exercise, and diet. On 88.5 Super FM, tell a friend, call your neighbor. Casualty 911 is on.
.5 Super FM. It is now 10 a.m. and it's now time for Casualty 911.
Good morning, Good morning. Well, today we have Lindsay with us. We don't have Erland, so Lindsay, it's wonderful to have you here. I am glad that you're here with us. Though I certainly miss Erland, but I'm really, really happy that you're here with us and to try to accommodate us this morning. We're so very grateful. Let me say good morning to all our listeners. Good morning to our community members. I know many of y'all might have enjoyed the weekend. Many of y'all went through many trials through the weekend, but don't give up. It is a new day, a wonderful day. Ensure that you take small steps in achieving your goals this week. I just want to say this morning we have two persons with us. They are nurses by profession. They will introduce themselves. Well, there are different types of nurses. This morning we have a topic that is, I don't know, it is an issue, but in the Sufra community, we see it every day. We face these problems every day. And today we want to talk a little bit about mental health and what the caregivers, caring for the caregivers of the mentally ill patients. Many of us do not know how to deal with mentally ill patients. We are caregivers of mentally ill patients, but who's taking care of us? And it is a cycle that continues day to day, and persons are really stressed about it. You have to be in the situation to know what it is, especially if you have a family member that is mentally ill, or you just a good Samaritan helping someone out. Sometimes you don't get that support that you need, and we have to educate persons, let persons in the community know what they can do, how they can play their part, and to ensure that everybody is treated fairly, even mentally ill patients. So having said that, I'm going to allow our nurses to introduce themselves, and then they will take it from there.
Okay, good morning. I am Nurse Matthew, Community Mental Health for Region 6.
Nurse Jana Felix, you hearing us?
Hi. Morning. I am here. Jana Felix Edward. I'm the mental health for Region 4. That's the area.
The Mikud area. We've had Nurse Felix before on the program. That was last year, right, Nurse Felix?
Yeah. I think it was about
October, yes.
About mental health month.
Yeah, we spoke about general mental health. So today we're having both nurses again with us. So we'll allow Nurse Doname to start. Matthew,
Good
sorry.
morning.
Bad habit.
Okay, we understand that one person is suffering with mental illness. That is not just the ill person that is suffering or impacted, but the family, the person immediately taking care of that individual, even the partners, the friends, even the community is affected. There are many ways that those individuals are affected. Shame, stigma, discrimination, it not only happens to the patient, but the caregivers of the patient. Important people in the person's life are often a source of support with the illness. However, family, partners, and friends may be faced with a loved one's mental illness without much information on ways to deal with it and its impact on their life. The family or caregivers play an important role in taking care of the day-to-day needs of the patient, monitoring the mental state, identifying the early signs of illness, relapse, and deterioration, helping the patient in accessing services, supervises treatment, and provides emotional support for the patient. Now, one of the things that caregivers can do to care for themselves is being more effective in helping their family member who is ill. These caregivers can be faced with the behavioral disturbances of the ill family members, and sometimes can also be a target of the patient's abusive or violent behavior. They must reduce on their social and leisure activities in order sometimes to take care of their loved ones. Sometimes their job is affected. They must meet the financial needs of the ill member besides meeting the treatment costs. The continuous stress of caregiving may negatively affect the physical and mental health of the caregivers and all their loved ones. So, how can you be more effective? Because as I said earlier, being more effective in caring for your loved one is what that could help you care for yourself. Get educated. We cannot function blindly. If you know the diagnosis of your family member, get educated, get information on what that means, whether it requires you to understand what type of medication they are taking or what part that you need to play in it. A lot of the times persons are not prepared for that role. Sometimes you need to sit with other family members to see who is best able to take up that role. The most effective person that may be able to take up the main role. However, there comes a point where you need to also sit with family to share the role of taking care of that individual. Encourage treatment. Being diagnosed early and getting treatment is important. We are always open to the family coming with their loved ones for us to discuss the treatment protocol, what is being given, how it is being given, whether we can adjust, change, and make it accommodating for not only the ill person, but for the family too. But if we don't see the family member or caregivers, we only have the patients in front of us, and that's who we can negotiate, for lack of a better word, to find out what we can do to help that individual.
So, nurse, let me ask, since you said fin treatment, can you at least contact a family member to come with that person?
We usually try to get the family members in. Sometimes it's difficult. Like I said earlier, the person has to leave their job and to maybe able to work around that to attend the clinic times.
Okay.
So we do get in touch and we try to get as much family members involved as possible.
Okay.
Reducing triggers of illness and making lifestyle adjustments for the family. Sometimes some patients, there are certain events that trigger their illness, certain events that agitate them even more, some things that you can remove from their environment, other things that you cannot. But it's important that you are aware. You spend more time with the ill family member than any healthcare provider. So that you may have more information than we do concerning what is affecting that individual. The person may not like the color red, so you may have to not put any red curtains in the house. So some things as basic as that may be what needs to be done while the person is recovering and being treated until they get to the point where they are able to cope and be at a more stable state. Common triggers include stressful life events, both positive and negative ones, conflicts and interpersonal stress, the use of alcohol and other drugs. To keep well, the person may need to make some adjustment to their lifestyles and goals. The extent of this adjustment can be different from each person. When dealing with alcohol and drugs, it takes some time for the person to accept that they have an issue and to also be able to overcome the addiction. But it's important not to put the poison around close enough to say. So if you know your family has an issue with alcohol, the same way we hide our drugs from children, lock it up, try to keep the person safeguard, because they may not be fully in a strong state to resist the urge to go after it. Developing a good support system, that is very important. The ill person needs a good support system, as well as the supporting individual needs a good support system. We find that persons do better when they have caring loved ones around them. They may struggle, but then they come to see, okay, they really see that their family, their caregivers really go out to help them, and they start making steps to be more independent with their care. Yeah. Give freedom. There comes a point where the ill person has recovered to a state where they are able to do things for themselves. The caregivers sometimes become dependent on being a caregiver, and they are afraid to allow that individual to make certain decisions when they get better. We're not asking that you give them full independence if they're not ready for that, but there comes a point where the person is able to fold clothes. Allow them to do it. Teach if they need teaching, so that they develop some independence to some extent. So each individual will be different, so you would know your family member, what they will be capable, but be open to allowing the person to have some freedom as they get better, as they improve. And that will make it less stressful for you.
That's true.
That you don't have to do every nitty-gritty thing for that individual after a while.
But no, sometimes it's like when you're taking care of a mentally ill patient, for some persons it's like having a child. You understand? And you know that sometimes maybe it's a woman, that maternal instinct is like they don't want to, let go, because they always feel that the person cannot do it, or the person will not do it properly, and so on. And from the get-go, caregivers, I mean, if you know that the person is a caregiver, I think, like you said, you really have to educate them from the very beginning when they start the process as a caregiver. Because a lot of times when the mentally ill patients are there, they're at hospital, you have to take care of them, do all what you have to do for them. And it continues, so it just becomes a routine for you sometimes.
Right now our talk concentrates on the chronic patients suffering with mental illness, but you realize there are different stages that persons are at. If we concentrating only on the chronically ill individual, then we have more of a dependence on the caregiver. But there are different stages that persons go through, and there are different types of illnesses where there will be a temporary phase where the caregiver is the sole caregiver, the person caring for that individual. And there comes a point where the person reaches a state of recovery where they are they should be allowed to do things for
In
themselves.
situations where we have difficult patients, is there any counseling or is there any assistance that the medical provide
To
to the
The caregivers.
caregivers. That is why we want constant dialogue with them,
Okay.
because oftentimes they are the first persons to know that the person is being a lot more difficult at the time. So unless we get the information, then we can have general conversations, but specific conversation, specific dialogues, we would like the people to come and sit down and let us know what is going on and see how we can navigate that difficult situation. Be a friend. Compassion and empathy sometimes is a difficult thing to learn in our day and age. Some persons go through compassion fatigue or empathy fatigue where they feel overwhelmed. And that is why we, like I said earlier, speak with the rest of your family and see how you can take a break. Because we are moving from the institutionalization of the patients into the community setting where they need to be incorporated and be able to live a full life. So in doing that, we may not have, the facility may not do what we did in the past where you can leave the patient there for long periods of time and get a break. That must be, maybe now it's a short period of time where we can get a break. But imagine having a person suffering with cancer, and when they get to a stage, we just drop them off somewhere and turn our backs and never turn back. It's painful for the person who is left there. So we understand that the stress the family goes through, but there must be some level of balance and communication that we be able to see what we can do to help both parties, all parties involved.
Just let me ask Nurse Felix. Feel free if you want to add anything to Nurse Matthew, what she's saying. Okay?
No problem.
All
Yeah,
right.
yeah, I'm there.
Okay. So being close to someone with a mental illness can be hard sometimes. Your loved one is going through hard times and they may say or do things that are out of character or that they don't intend to be hurtful. Continue to love them and be their friend. That may be the most difficult thing to do. For instance, somebody who's experiencing Alzheimer's, there comes a point when the illness is deteriorated to a point where they forget their family members and they may say hurtful things, and that's difficult to receive. Yes. So you set boundaries to ensure you do not get hurt physically or emotionally. Remember that your friends does not need another mental professional. So your family member who's suffering with mental illness do not need another professional. They need somebody who loves them, a friend, a family, and to care for them. They need someone that they can laugh with, enjoy time with, feel accepted by, regardless of the illness, and they can trust and depend on. Follow your family member or friend's cue. If they want to talk, be ready to listen. If they do not want to talk, support them and show that you are there for them when they are ready. Take care of yourself. A lot of persons get into caregiver mode and they neglect their own health. And in the end, they are stressed, they are overwhelmed to the point that they cannot provide the best care for the other person. So it's important. Some persons feel embarrassed to ask for help. Some persons feel that they should be the only person helping, but then you are not going to function at your optimal, at your best for that individual if you are tired and not taking care of your own needs. Take time out for yourself, get enough sleep, exercise, balance your life, get help. Some of these things are a lot easier said than done,
Very much so.
but it is important. Like I tell some persons, even if you don't have a lot of time, the little time that you do the best in the little time. If you have 10 minutes, get 10 minutes of quality rest. Get 10 minutes of quality you time. You may not have an hour to work with, but the little time that you have, put quality in what you do in it for yourself, to take care of yourself. Get help, get help, get help.
But nurse, you're saying get help. Sometimes out of all family members, everybody just drop it on your account.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Not everybody
And
is
you
the
you
same.
want the help, but who is coming forward to provide some assistance?
Okay, that's where you, if you cannot reach out to your family members, see what groups are available for that setting. Go to the professional individuals, and find out what avenues are there to provide you or help you with support in that sense.
Okay.
Okay. I understand there's a lot of time there's only one person who's the main support for that individual.
That
And
is
it's
true.
usually when we meet that individual, we can see that they're exhausted and frustrated. And the break is needed for that individual to take, because God forbid that the ill person some over dies, then the carer is left with a crisis of themselves, because now they have adapted to the routine of always caring for someone, and they are care for themselves after, and they are lost sometimes. So the same way we want to look after the ill individual, we want to look after the carers. We need to be show compassion and empathy. They experience the same stigma and discrimination that their family experience a lot of the times.
You mentioned about getting help from some groups. What are the groups that we have here on island to assist in such situations?
I will, let me hand it over to Jana. Jana, will you assist me on most of the groups that you know?
Um, there's still so much stigma attached to mental illness that it's not just the mentally ill person that doesn't seek help. The carers, because of the stigma, tend to not seek help as well. And as a result of that, they tend to try to do everything on their own. And that is where the frustration comes in. That's when they get frustrated, they get tired, they get stressed out, they get burnt out. But times are very much changing, and the government has started the mental health. Well, they've extended the mental health services within the community, and so as Nurse Matthew said earlier, we are advising and encouraging the carers to come out with the mentally ill persons or even alone. The services that are available there, there are support groups available for persons who are alcoholics. There are support groups for Alzheimer's and dementia. There is an entire association within the island for that. We have the persons on the mental health team, including the psychotherapist who is available to offer services. The psychotherapist may have other persons who are willing to form part of a support group for persons who are mentally ill. Unfortunately, only about on a yearly basis, they meet the carers, and at that point, the carers have an opportunity to um, voice their concerns, their issues, their stresses, their difficulties, and they get support from other persons who are at that forum. I hope I didn't miss any, Nurse Matthew.
Very good. Thank you.
Before you go on, Nurse Matthew, someone is asking, he's saying, good morning to all. Why discharge the mentally challenged persons days after they're admitted and leave everything to the police? One more thing which is done, giving letters to bring to the police to escort them to get medication. The police will assist only if the patient is violent. So can you all give a little heads up on that statement, nurses?
In reference to the document that they are given to the police officers to assist with not arresting, but transporting the individual to the mental wellness center. A lot of the time, um, persons who family members believe are mentally ill because of their behavior have not been thoroughly assessed or diagnosed as having a mental illness. So they are not known to the wellness center. As a result of that, well, in addition to that, the police themselves don't know every single mentally ill person on island. And so if they get that little paper that says that the person is mentally ill and the family needs assistance to bring them to the wellness center, the police knows for sure that the individual is mentally ill. The reason for that is if the person has no formal diagnosis of a mental illness, they're not supposed to be taken directly to the mental wellness center. They're supposed to be taken to any general hospital for them to be assessed and cleared medically. The reason for that is sometimes persons may display symptoms or signs of mental illness, and it is as a result of a medical illness. If the medical illness is taken care of, the signs that they demonstrated of mental illness are gone. And for that reason, in most cases, they don't need to go to the mental wellness center. Um, Additionally, you said persons are discharged from the mental wellness center and everything is left to the police. The mental wellness center is a hospital. They offer support for persons who are mentally ill, and after the individuals are considered within a certain state of wellness, they need to be discharged. Similarly to when you go to OKEU or St. Jude's Hospital or Sufre Hospital or Denry Hospital, when you are well, you are released back into the public. The problem with a lot of persons in society is the stigma, and they tend to believe that mentally ill persons are not, they cannot be fruitful, when this is actually a very big myth. Mentally ill people have skills, they have talents, and they can be very fruitful persons and very helpful persons in society. They just need to be given the chance to prove that they can and that they are capable. The problem that exists within society as well is that mentally ill persons are provoked a lot because they are known to have a mental illness, and that is very unfair to them. They are people, they are human beings, and they should be treated with the respect and dignity that is expected from everybody.
Very well
Yes.
said, Nurse Felix.
Okay. So, if you are a caregiver of someone suffering with mental illness, it is normal to feel unprepared or confused on how to help them. Feelings of inadequacy are common, but remember you are not alone and there is always professional help available. Just like every new diagnosis, even old diagnosis that you know of, sometimes you approach a state where you're unsure about the progress. Seek advice, seek help. But if you work in isolation, you will only perform what you know. Okay? When we think of recovery, we often misinterpret recovery as a day when the individual is healed and done with treatment. Unfortunately, recovery is not an event. It is one step at a time, incremental process towards wellness with good days and not so good days. Some information that you read or hear may make it seem that recovery is rare or unlikely, but people can and do recover from serious mental illness. Okay?
What is being done by our medical sector in terms of dealing with the stigma and discrimination?
Um, I don't want us to think that it's only isolated to St. Lucia. It's a global thing that over the years a lot of awareness has been happening, where a lot of talks to try to reduce on stigma and discrimination, and it's an ongoing process. It's not something that we will overcome in the next 10 years. I believe that it will be an ongoing process where persons need to be reminded, we ourselves need to be reminded on the way we speak, how we approach the individual. Sometimes we do it in jest, we jokingly say something and we don't realize that it is discrimination or it is a stigma talk that is happening. So a lot of times we have to be self-aware after we get the teachings. A lot of the talks have been happening over the years. You may have seen here and there psychiatrists come on TV or on the radio, and we try to go for out in the community and speak about it and make persons more aware and comfortable with having that topic or being involved in that sector. So it's ongoing in terms of dealing with it, that situation.
Someone is asking, do you provide counseling for the caregivers?
Yes, right now we have psychotherapists in the community that we can refer. There is avenue, the same individuals that you would send your person suffering with mental illness. Like like to say, mental health is the concern of every individual. It's the health of your mind, whatever the mind is involved. So the same avenue, if you come to me as the nurse and I have a dialogue with you and I realize that you need to be referred to an individual where you need that in-depth counseling, I would refer you to the where necessary. So we there are things in place.
So, nurse, let me ask you, if I'm taking care of a mentally ill patient, like I will, somebody in the community say, moi ale de nos la pou ede situasyon pou mouche mou manye pou dilep situasyon. Epi ka vwe mwen bay on shrink, vou nos la menm kwe mwen menm foot fall too, ebe mwen menm foot too. It's like that would be my way of thinking.
No.
Because I mean the same process happens to the mentally ill patients. You're
Yes.
sending me as an individual,
So-
and I'm not mental.
Yes, so a lot of times depends on who you speak to. For me, I would inform the person and let them know, okay, maybe I'm not the best person to give you the quality that you need with the issue that you're bringing to me. And I will refer you to the person that I believe is best qualified in that area to help you. We can collaborate and deal with it, but there are some issues that need to go to the person who is specifically qualified to handle that topic.
So it's not because you
Not because you're mad, you're off, you're going, you not none of that. All of us need some time where we speak with someone and we allow them to give us a new viewpoint and a perspective. And because they are out of the situation, they're not emotionally involved with that whole situation, that they can give you a new perspective and help you out.
When we meet with the clients, if they do come in and say that they need some form of assistance with coping with somebody who has a mental illness, our session with them is going to be quite lengthy because we would really, really assess the situation. It's not just about coping with the individual, but if in our assessment we determine that you're not coping well enough yourself because you're dealing with them alone, and you have run out of all coping mechanisms that you know you've tried before, and you just need a little bit more help, then we may give you tips on how to deal with the mentally ill individual. But the person we're sending you to is going to help you deal with tips on how to deal with it yourself, on how to cope with it on your own, on ways to additional mechanisms that you can put in place that you didn't even know you had. They may be able to touch base with things you have dealt with before, stressors you have dealt with before, and bring to light ways that you can deal with the situation differently because their practice, their studies bring them in that direction, but ours don't. So for us, it's about ensuring that you get holistic care. Like Nurse said, care is not just for the mentally ill individual. Care is for the caregivers as well. Care is for everybody that suffers or is affected by an individual who has a mental illness.
Yep.
You had a question, Lindsay?
No, that's all for now.
Uh, yes, some time ago, um, I was in a situation where I said to a group, a mentally ill patient came, and then to allow the mentally ill patient to filter through, it was said that to the other group, can we allow um, the mentally ill patient to filter through? Is that something we as health professional can say, even if it's to a group? Because sometimes we as health professionals do not have the skills, we do not know how to deal with mentally ill patients because we come across them every day, and sometimes we're in the community and we hear people speak about it, or we hear people or we see rather the way people treat mentally ill patients, like they'll say mun salafu, or they will say monsieur pani bon tête, all these kind of things. Is that things that persons should be saying out to mentally ill patients, or they might say or they might see somebody that's going through some issue in their life and they're not that person like they used to know before. So they, who savez be problem, and they'll say it so loud. Maybe the person is just going through depression or something that it might capture the person's attention. Is that things we community members should engage in, especially to, I mean, mentally ill patients and so on, because I know persons really get upset when they hear these things. I, for one, get upset when I hear these things. But to the public out there, is there any message you want to bring out to the public out there based on these kind of sayings to persons out there that might be mentally ill?
Start practicing more compassion and empathy. Stop talking about compassion and empathy and start practicing it. We in a community where we are notorious for gossip and we talk with the guise of helping without helping. And if we are talking, let's help. Imagine you in that situation, imagine your child in that situation, imagine we never know where we end up in our lives. Some of us are stronger than others. Some of us will recover quickly than others. There are people who are suffering with mental illness, but they are not known. And you making those statements, even the persons that are unknown is affected, but you're not aware that they are being affected. And like I said, start practicing compassion and empathy. Anything else, Jana?
I think too we need to look within ourselves and consider our own values and beliefs and attitudes towards persons that are part of different communities that are not ours. So, how do you feel about somebody who is mentally ill? How do you feel about somebody who is crippled? How do you feel about somebody who is disabled? A lot of the time, our values, our beliefs come forth with what we say. And we need to be mindful that demeaning and discriminatory terminology does not uplift anybody because it only takes one day, one episode, one activity for mental illness to knock at our door. Mental illness is not just the vagrant you see walking on the road, quarreling and talking to themselves. It is not closed to that group only. There are a lot of conditions that are part of the group of mental illness. So things as simple as anxiety, as depression, if you continuously have panic attacks, all of those things are mental illness. And if we really sit and think of our life, we would realize that at one point or another, we may have been depressed ourselves. We may have been super anxious about something ourselves. We may have experienced, as small as it is, some form of mental illness. We may have been able to cope with it or deal with it on our own or go to a private psychologist, psychiatrist, psychotherapist and deal with it on a hush hush basis. But not everybody is able to do that. Not everybody has those means. And so it is not fair, it is not humane for us to continue to use discriminatory and demeaning terms when we are referring to another human being, because everybody's cross is not ours and everybody's battle is different. And instead of helping them fight the battle, we really don't need to throw one more bow or one more arrow. We really don't need to stick our own sword in, because it only makes the fight harder. Um, as a society, we need to be more helpful, more compassionate, more loving towards each other, and it would really help with the discrimination and the stigma that exists.
Thank you, Nurse. Having said that, I just made mention of this because these are things we see around our communities, and you know, when you do that, when persons do these things, it put additional pressure on the caregivers because these persons go home, they're upset, they're agitated, they tend to act differently, and sometimes you, as the caretaker, do not know what went on. And even if sometimes you ask, they might not say. So, all of that is additional stress on the caretaker. And persons need to be mindful of all these things. Their actions in the community. And rightly said, our different communities, different culture, different. So, I mean, we deal with situations in different communities differently. And that is why we're here today to educate the public on, what caregivers really go through taking care of a mentally ill patient. And I'm so happy to have you all here today. Is there anything else you would like to add, Nurse Felix?
Continue to be self-aware, continue to be sensitive, show empathy and compassion. If you are not taught to do it, research and look for ways that you can learn how to do it, because sometimes we are taught to do the negative, but it's up to us to be empowered and pursue what we need to be better individuals so that we can show value for persons suffering with mental illness. A lot of the self-worth issues are made worse when they go out into the community, but it's important that we show value, show respect for all of the individuals suffering with illnesses that are evident in to everyone.
Well said, Nurse Matthew. Is there anything else you would like to add, Nurse Felix, before we leave?
I think if we practice no commandment at all, we can at least practice one, which is love your neighbor as yourself. Um, if we if we practice that, then we can actually show empathy and show love and show compassion and just care about persons on a whole. Sometimes we may not be able to do anything because we're not within that field, but help is available. And if you don't know where help is, Just remember, every region in the island has many, many health centers. And so if they're not sure, you could just refer the person to whichever health center is closest to them, and the nurses there will be able to assist. The staff there will be able to assist them. Um, so it's if you don't know, don't try to do things on your own. You may end up saying the wrong thing. You may end up doing the wrong thing. You may end up giving the wrong advice. So it's better if you refer them to persons, to professionals who have been trained, who have the means, who know what to do, when to do, how to do. And for carers, for persons with mental illnesses, um, researching is awesome. You can get a lot of help online. If you cannot get help within your community, there are a lot of international and regional support groups that you may find online that are positive and that are open, where you can get support and love and everything that you could possibly need. And when if you ever get tired of Google, you can always ask for a mental health personnel within your community, and you can get the help that you need.
Thank you, nurse.
Um, Having said that, we would like to thank all our listeners. Do you want to say anything else, Nurse Matthew, before we leave? All right. Um, we would like to thank all our listeners for listening on this program today. We're hoping that we will have much more to come. Hopefully, as the months go by, we'll be having different mental health topics, and then following that, I think this when is mental health month,
October.
mental health October. So
September is suicide awareness.
suicide awareness, and in October. So we're hoping that the community members can participate in these activities. Feel free to ask questions. Um, Next month, if our nurses are available, we might have another topic. We want to continue educating, like nurse said. One of the things to help caregivers is education, and as well as community members. So this is one thing we really, really want to continue island wide, and specifically in our region, and we welcome that opportunity, and we're forever grateful to Nurse Matthew and Nurse Felix for providing that information to our listeners. Um, like Nurse Felix said, if you have somebody at home or you as a caregiver need assistance, you can always come to our nearest wellness center where information will be provided, and recommendation will be made to our mental health nurse that you can come in on the days they are available. And a small step, like Nurse Matthew
Yes.
said, small step, can lead to better things for you as a caregiver as well as the mentally ill patient. So, having said that, I would also like to thank Lincia for being here with us today. Um, I know you came all out to assist, and we're very, very grateful. The Bureau is very, very grateful for assisting. Let me just say good morning to my colleague from Minville. I know you're not here with us, but I'm sure you're listening today. And again, thanks to all our listeners. All right. So thank you, Nurse Felix, for being there with us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you.
88.5 Super FM. You've just heard Casualty 911. I would like to thank all of you who tuned in, and thank you all for joining us inside. Until next time, goodbye.